This is the All Day Ruckoff podcast, episode number 6. Welcome to the All Day Ruckoff podcast, episode number 6. This is your host, Brian, and I wanted to thank you so much for tuning in. We truly hope you enjoy this episode, and don't forget to check out our previous episodes as well. The All Day Ruckoff podcast includes interviews, answers questions, and provides updates on the rucking community. Today, I am very excited to be interviewing Chris Way, who is both a GORUCK Cadre as well as the founder of PACElid. Stick around to the end of the show to learn how you can get a discount on your very own PACElid, as well as have the chance to win a free entry into the next Pathfinder Ruck Training course. Before we get into the interview, I wanted to thank everyone who has left a review on the Apple Podcast Network. We've got John Mayo leaving a 5-star review saying, "Great podcast so far. I've sent it over to a few coworkers that have expressed interest in rucking. Keep up the good work." Thank you, John. That means a lot, both that you would take the time out of your day to leave a review and that you find the content in the podcast good enough that you don't mind sharing it with your friends. Thank you. We've got a second review from Running Mountain Mama. The podcast offers a great introduction to rucking as well as information for those who are familiar with it. Thank you so much, Running Mountain Mama. That means a lot. If you're looking for some good AARs, Running Mountain, spelled MTN, mama.wordpress.com is her blog, and she has a number of them. Finally, we've got Ruckcast from Mickey Knuckles. Glad there is a podcast for ruckers. Great work so far. Keep it up. Hump Squad out. Thank you so much, Mickey, for taking the time to leave that review. If you want to learn more about Hump Squad, you can find them on Facebook. They have a page, HMPSQD Ruck Club, with their name originating from the word hump, which is a slang term for Ruck March. Thank you so much for taking the time to leave that. It truly means a lot. If you want to leave a rating or review, you can find us on the Apple Podcast Network under All Day Ruckoff. Final announcement before we start the interview. I will be putting together a trial of AAR shows, which are after action reviews. I'll be posting up on Facebook and on the website that I'm looking for some GRTs who are interested in chatting for 10 minutes or so about a GORUCK event. I'll be putting them together by level. So we'll do a GORUCK Light AAR podcast, a GORUCK Tough AAR podcast, etc. And we'll try and roll one of those out once a month. If you choose to respond and end up on the podcast, then I am currently producing All Day Ruckoff podcast patches. The only way to earn these will be to appear on the podcast. I think I've taken enough of your time. On to the interview. I'm here talking with Chris Way from PACElid. For those who don't know, Chris started PACElid after a very successful Kickstarter and has been running strong with it since. Besides owning PACElid, he is a cadre for GORUCK and an adventurer. I'm very excited that Chris is here to chat about PACElid and some of his experiences at GORUCK and GORUCK events. For those who don't know what a PACElid is, you can either visit the show notes at alldayruckoff.com/podcast/episode-006 to see a picture of it, or you can just imagine it is a replacement lid for your Nalgene or Hydro Flask water bottle, which has a removable top so that you can store items within the actual lid. So Chris, before we get started talking about PACElid, can you tell me how you found GORUCK and about your first GORUCK event?
My introduction to GORUCK was at a Tough Mudder, and I had gone to one of the early Tough Mudders in 2011. My daughter had just been born. My daughter Louise, my 6-year-old, was just born, and so my wife and I hadn't been doing things together athletically, and I was looking for some outlets. And Tough Mudder was coming to Colorado, and I thought, great, I'm going to do this with a couple friends as a team, and we're going to try to win it. The 4 of us went to run the Tough Mudder thinking, that we would be competitive. And we're lined up, early morning, first heat, and there's this guy wearing a tan backpack. I just couldn't help myself. Most of the time I kind of let people live and do their thing, rock on. If it seems weird, I'll kind of watch them for a while, and I'm not going to judge, but I couldn't believe that there's this guy standing there, in what looked like running gear and a tan backpack. And I thought, shit, man, competitive heat. What's he doing with a backpack on? So we had a few minutes, and we'd done the intro, and we're sitting there, and everybody was shivering. And I walked up, and I was like, "Hey, man, what's up with your backpack?" And, I felt a little uncomfortable because it seemed like it could be interpreted as rude. And he looks at me and he goes, there's this thing called GORUCK, and we do them the days before a Tough Mudder. And when you finish, you run the Tough Mudder with your ruck full of beer. And he opened up his, what turns out to be a GR1. It was full of beer. And so I kind of made a mental, I kind of looked at him like almost in disbelief. Like, it was hard for me to wrap my head around this guy standing there telling me that he did this thing before, that when you finished it, then you could do the Tough Mudder with your backpack full of beer. So, shit, that was pretty weird, And we did the Tough Mudder, and a couple days later, my wife was showing me pictures, and it happened to have that guy in it. And I thought, man, what the fuck was he talking about? So I looked it up, and a few days later, there was the GORUCK Challenge up in Bozeman. So we've got friends that we know in the climbing community and spend a lot of time up in Bozeman. So I said, hey, I'd really like to do this thing. And it's a good excuse for us to drive up to Bozeman. Let's throw Louise in the car and head up to Bozeman. I'll do this thing, this Tough Mudder thing. We'll hang out with our friends and we'll do a little climbing. I legitimately showed up to Bozeman expecting a Tough Mudder-like thing, after which, if you wanted to wear a backpack and fill it with Budweisers, you could. There wasn't a whole lot of information on the internet about GORUCK or about the challenge. And the slogan was information not forthcoming, right? Do you remember that?
Absolutely.
Information not forthcoming, or details not forthcoming. Sorry about that. So the slogan for, and now it almost seems like a golden ticket for psychological, bait, right? Here's this thing, information not forthcoming. You have to go, right? If you've got that mentality of, I have to figure out what this thing is, information not forthcoming. All right. You got me. I'm going to drive 10 hours with my, 3-week-old daughter and wife, stay with some friends, and figure out what the not forthcoming information about this secret little club is. And so I showed up, and the hours were, seemed a little bit strange. This one started at 6 in the evening. It was going to be over at 6 in the morning. So it started at 6 p.m. And I thought, great, we're going to have some dinner, and then I'll go do this thing. It goes for 12 hours. Actually, back then it was 8 to 10 hours. That was pretty much all I knew. And then I needed to come with bricks wrapped in duct tape. So that worked out really well with wife and daughter, because they would sleep, wake up, and then we would get on with our day the next day. I showed up and figured out that it wasn't what I had imagined. It wasn't Tough Mudder. Yeah. And I got to meet Jack and Jason and the Bozeman crew that they had. I saw their rucks at the time. They would give you a GORUCK bag to carry through the event. So we got to see the brick bag before it was for sale, and the GR1 and the radio ruck. And I got to see Bozeman like I hadn't seen it before. And when all was said and done, I finished class 5-1 and wasn't sure if I was going to do another one. But a few weeks after that, I did do another one in Colorado. So class 5-1, what time did that end at? I think we ended around 10 a.m. or something. Was your wife worried about you? No, I don't think she was worried about me. That's actually pretty funny. The class had 6 people. When the sun came up the next morning, there was some curiosity in terms of like where we were going and when we were ending. Some of the people in the class had things to do and had budgeted 8 to 10 hours. We were pretty far from where we had started. Still, some of the information was proven to be hard to figure out. Well, it's over when your class decides it's over. So someone took that as like, well, shit, let's just decide it's over. It'll be over with. Of course, we're out of town, and that wasn't really what was going to happen. And there was a lot of trying to figure out each little phase of the challenge. And it was unlike any other challenge that I had been on, but there was definitely some confusion, some anger, and some teamwork. And one of the participants, she got really upset when we were talking about, trying to figure out how the event was going to finish. If we had to figure out as a team when it was going to finish, and she got upset. She yelled at all of us, said, it's over when it's over. Shut up, quit being pussies, and let's keep going. It was pretty impressive. It definitely left a mark on everybody. Proved to be so unusual that I had to do another one. That's awesome. Yeah. My girlfriend at the time, my wife now, I was in class 053, and that was, 2 classes after yours, back when there was no information online. There was no phone number for GORUCK listed on the website, no email address that was public.
I believe at the time, around 6 or 7 in the morning. We had a 6 p.m. start time as well. She was calling the local ERs because she thought that I died or something, and the class just left me because there was no information about the event. She had no clue what was going on.
Yeah, it's come a long way. But on the other hand, I always feel like the types of people that were attracted to the first certain number of classes with little to no information, it attracted an adventurous, different type of crowd. The likes of Joel Gatt, Mark Webb, and you, Fergus, all these great people that have, become kind of giants in this community that came looking for adventure and something different. Part of the appeal really was that you didn't know what you were going to get. You didn't know how long it was going to go. So there were all these unknowns. You had to overcome it as a group, whatever that meant. You just kind of had to do it and figure it out. And that's changed quite a bit, for better or for worse. I mean, events now have matured quite a bit. The community's grown a lot larger. The GRT community as a whole is fantastic. It's an amazing group of people. A lot of the expectations now are, that everybody knows minute by minute details. Think about selection now. There are probably people in the community who've never done the event. I can tell you, at hour 3, they'll be 4 miles into the 12-mile ruck march. The most effective loadout is XYZ, and it's kind of mind-boggling, the details that people know about. Whereas, had it been that way when I heard about it, it would have had no interest to me personally. So I'm glad I found it when I did. I'm glad I got to see it and mature and evolve over the years and become a part of this amazing population of people that have done crazy things as a group, meet all these crazy individuals that do really fun things.
Agreed. Absolutely agreed. It's been very interesting watching the community evolve and the events especially evolve since the beginning. So you run PACElid. How did that idea come about? Did that grow from the GORUCK community, or was that something you saw a need for? When
you do something and you've been involved in activities, you've reached a certain level of maturity in that activity, you know the requirements of the gear that you're going to be using. And, regardless of how minimalist you are, anything you do is going to require a certain type of gear, and you're going to have demands of it. And so it's not unusual for people to modify gear. Across the board, people are modifying just about every piece of kit that they use for whatever their activities are. And so a lot of things that you might find handy or need to carry on you can be easy to forget. I remember when it kind of dawned on me, the idea, and the idea was, people are carrying around these little kits, these little survival kits, these little med kits. And yet, more common than not, people would say, oh, I bought this really cool kit from, vendor X, Y, and Z that was in a tin can, or it was in a, something or other, but I left it at home. So you've got this thing to serve a purpose that you don't have with you. And I remember sitting around thinking, I always forget that shit. So no matter how useful it is, it's kind of a moot point. What do people never forget? And one of the items that people tend not to forget as often is their water bottle. So the question was, how do I take this Altoid tin and equip it to my water bottle? I found myself trying to super glue or Gorilla Glue Altoid tin to the lid of my Nalgene, because I tend to go places with Nalgene bottles. I have this fear of popping bladders when I can't fix them, or if I'm too far from civilization and I got this thing that doesn't do what it's supposed to do. So I like carrying Nalgene bottles. And anyway, I found myself trying to glue an Altoid tin to the lid of a Nalgene, and then I kind of smiled, laughed, and felt like an idiot. I reached out to the GORUCK community with a request that if anybody had any 3D modeling, 3D printing experience or know-how, I want to make something for myself as a part of my kit. A GRT named Sam reached out and said, yeah, that's what I do. Send me a sketch. So I sketched it out on a little piece of paper. A couple of weeks later, I got some 3D printed versions of the PACElid for me to use. And I started to use them for about a year. People liked them, people wanted them, but to 3D print them, it wasn't cost effective. So it wasn't intended to be a business move, and it wasn't intended to be much more than something that I was going to use at first. But it did get exposure at GORUCK events. There seemed to be some interest, but it wasn't something that I was able at the time to provide to people. But over the course of that year, running GORUCK events, I was exposed to a lot of people, and along that road, not only did I introduced to Sam, who was able to 3D print them and do the designs, but I met a patent lawyer who was able to get me patents for the designs. And I met someone who had just recently ran a Kickstarter campaign. And it came up that people would be interested in buying them if we would injection mold them. I didn't have the money to be able to produce the mold itself. Too expensive. But there was so much support saying, do this because we want to buy one. We'll run a Kickstarter campaign. Everybody will get the lids that they want. And then we can get on with our lives.
And if I recall, that was a very successful campaign.
Yeah. It funded in 24 hours. And PACElid became, kind of a GORUCK household name for a while. I imagine that it was probably a little bit obnoxious. Just like a lot of things on social media and campaigns, and your kind of circle of clicks and likes picks up. That's all you can see for a while, but it's able to fully fund itself, pay for the production of the molds, pay for the run of PACElids, and produce kind of a surplus quantity, not knowing what was going to happen to PACElids. Never really an idea of starting a business. It was more like, how do I get this product to people who want to use them when I can't afford to make them myself? It's a really good solution to the problem of getting them made and into people's hands. After which, of course, I have the mold and I've continued to make them and sell them on a website, but that was all after the fact, after getting them into the hands. And I think we had close to 880 backers.
That's awesome.
It's really hard to tell who exactly came from the GORUCK community, but I would guess that 3/4 of the support, 2/3, 3/4, something like that, probably came from the GORUCK community. A lot of the names I recognize. Some of them I don't, but I would have to say that the lion's share of the campaign came from GORUCK community, which wasn't surprising because they were the ones that encouraged me to do it in the first place.
Yeah, the GRT community is a good, strong community.
Yeah, and something that they did ask for and they provided a solution for, and that's what's really interesting to me is I say, I'd like to make this thing. Somebody steps out of the community and says, I can help you make that thing. And somebody says, I can help protect that thing. And people saying, I would like one, so I'll support it to get one. And everybody that said that they would support that did. And it became a reality. And then the surplus, I recently donated the remaining surplus to Boy Scout and Girl Scout troops.
That's awesome.
That feels good to give it back to a community that can use them, but doesn't necessarily have the disposable income, being kids.
Right.
To go out and explore the wilderness and develop skills that are less common nowadays than they may have been when scouting originated. It's nice to see kids take something and put it to use.
There aren't many communities out there, going back to the GRT community, that will help you through every step of the process without trying to rob you or rip you off in some way. And so I think that's something pretty special about the GRT community.
Oh, it's amazing. And a lot of things in life are very expensive and not, because somebody's trying to make $1. It's just it's an expensive process to produce a product.
Especially manufacturing. There's a lot of hidden costs I don't think a lot of people realize until you get into it and start making something. There are a lot of hidden costs.
Yeah, man. I mean, every time I looked into it, I was kind of blown away and shocked. I thought, it'll cost a couple $1,000s and we'll make this plastic. Everybody talks about cheap plastic. And then when you find out that the molds are $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 to just for a piece of metal, and it's like, all right, well, that's not going to happen. And then I'm proven wrong again. I've learned a lot, and I've been pleasantly surprised by what people are able to do. And the GORUCK community across the board is doing really amazing things. I remember, a number of years ago, we decided, hey, let's see what we can do with a ruck, and we'll just kind of pass it off and see how far we can swap it around the country. And the first ruck across America passed the GR1 around the country. And there were some hiccups, and there were some gaps that needed to be filled by sending it because there weren't as many people in the community. But the ruck traveled a humongous distance. Some of the continuous ruck sections broke the Guinness Book of World Records for continuous walks. And a lot of great things came of it just for the sake of let's do something together. And now the second iteration of that is happening. That's cool to see on top of all the other exciting things that people are doing. The All Day Ruckoff went from this little website to having a podcast.
It's crazy looking back at where things started and where they are now.
But it's nice because you can learn, you can grow, you can mature, and you've got the support of a community that's able to help you.
It truly is a very supportive community. There aren't many communities where I'd feel comfortable doing something like this, so it's awesome. The original version of the PACElid that came from the Kickstarter campaign, I own that one. And then I recently purchased the newer version, which came with the Constellation kit. What prompted the newer version?
So there were a couple things, and I'm kind of a forward-looking person, and I try to look on the bright side because we're always trying to move forward. But there were some hiccups with the manufacturing of the first version, and although the Kickstarter community agreed on the material and the design and the look to a certain extent, there were some problems with the manufacturing. Some of the problems required that I change the mold a little bit in order to continue making them. And when I took the mold from the original manufacturer, which was down the street from me, to a different manufacturer, which is also down the street from me, in order to use their mold on the machines effectively, they had to change a couple things. And in order to do that and not look like the molds were changed much, we needed to modify them slightly. I also wanted to change the threading a little bit and give a little bit of texture or grip to the lid. So some of them we were kind of forced into changing because of problems with the mold. And some of them I wanted to change because I wanted to be a little bit more compatible with various thread patterns. One thing I learned is that most of the bottles that are out there, although the thread patterns and size of the wide mouth bottles, they look pretty close to one another. There's not a standard thread pattern. So trying to find something that matched a lot of those, there was a certain amount of trial and error once the general size came into play. And so the Kickstarter one was supposed to have a good seal, but when the material was changed, the seal was less effective. And I wanted to change that because I like to carry around a Hydro Flask. In addition to my Nalgene, I wanted to fit both without having to change the threads, and it does now. So I like that. I think of it as upgraded. And the material, even though it's still a high-density polyethylene, it doesn't have the injecting agent into it, so it doesn't flake as much as the Kickstarter campaign. It was kind of a neat texture and a kind of a neat look to it, but it ended up wearing differently. And I thought this was a cool thing to make it look a little bit different from the Kickstarter campaign.
Yeah, it looks really nice. The newer version is the one in the GORUCK store now. Is that correct?
It is, yeah. GORUCK has the Constellation kit. When I first saw it up there, I think it's listed under Survival Kit. It comes with the Survival Kit and the PACElid. And they weren't offering the PACElids empty as a standalone product on the website.
Right. So if you want to get the PACElid empty, pacelid.com, and you're on Amazon now.
Yeah, I did put it on Amazon also.
So that's got to be exciting to be in the GORUCK store now. How did that come about?
I was on the team that designed Constellation, and the kit very closely matched a lot of the gear and evolutions that were in Constellation. So carrying something that you're not going to forget and have on you that could be used in urban survival, escape, seemed to make sense.
Makes perfect sense.
Because it's a kit that's offered on the site now, it matches the class, it matches the curriculum.
Speaking of using the PACElid, I've been on Instagram on the PACElid page, and I've seen a number of unique pictures and uses. I've used mine personally for my dog's water dish or to bring snacks to the park. What are some of the best or most unique uses you've seen for your lid?
Yeah, I've seen a lot. I guess it depends who our audience is, right? A lot of people put their snacks. My kids like to put their snacks, or my daughter uses one of them as a chalk bag when she's bouldering. I've seen bullets, tea, of course, the dog and cat bowls. That's a really good use for it. People using them as measuring cups. At some of the Navigator events, we've made bread and used the PACElid and its cap as the standard measurement for the ingredients for bread. In Colorado, pot's legal. I've seen them stuffed with pot, and seen whiskey and a Nalgene full of Coke.
There you go.
Freeze water, and you got a giant ice cube, and man,
I think that whiskey Coke's the winner.
I guess probably the most PC'd away. I've made a PACElid firework, I guess you can call it. I was working on underwater fuses, and I decided that I would sacrifice a couple of the old PACElids, the test of whether they would work or not. So we had some homemade PACElid fireworks going on. What else? As a bobber for fishing, NorCal GRTs told me he lost one in the Pacific Ocean. So maybe it's shark bait. Maybe there's one that's shark bait right now. There's a little shovel. I've dug Dakota fire holes with them. What else? A candle. If you melt wax in it, you can turn them into a candle, with a lid on, which is pretty cool. People are really creative with what they put in them. But I would say the standard is probably survival and first aid equipment.
I like that. That's a really good list. I'll have to write that out.
I forget who made the candle, but the candle was pretty impressive.
That's definitely unique. I would not have thought of that. So what's next for PACElid?
That's a good question. Right now, I'm just plugging along, doing the GORUCK thing, continue to adventure and do some races, and hopefully continue to build the base so it gets a little more exposure and get into some big box stores, sell a few more on GORUCK, and see what happens.
Yeah, I saw the new packaging for it, for the 2017 version. It looks really nice. It looks like something you would definitely see in a store.
My friend Matt designed those, and he does a lot of art for stuff that I do, and he designed that package so that it slips onto the lid and it can hang on a shelf. We have barcodes, so we are prepared to sell them in stores. I tend to move slow and conservative with stuff like this, and not having a background in business. I like to do my homework, and I like to kind of take it easy, give things time to feel them out. It doesn't have a huge operating budget, so things have to be done carefully and kind of be weighed what it's capable of. You don't want to rush too far ahead and not be able to do something. So as of right now, the plans are to continue as we've been doing for the last year and see if we can get in stores, see if we can build a bigger community of users to get more exposure. People like to tell me, you should be on Shark Tank. Spend a lot of time watching shows like that. One of the common things that they ask is, what are your sales to date? Pretty clear that businesses that are starting out that are very small, they need to carry on for a certain amount of time to prove that they have market value by sales on their own. Another thing I like to say is, well, this sounds more like a hobby than a business. But right now, it's probably still in the hobby phase. It would be nice to have it grow into a business, but I don't want to rush into it so quickly that I lose my shirt. And along the way, if somebody decided to buy it, we've got the patent and we've got the molds and all that, and that could be another option. It's important for me to do things right and make those locally and be able to give them directly to the people that use them and educate people as to how we use them and what we use them for, and be realistic about, what it is and what it does. I think that has to happen organically.
Definitely. Well, that's exciting. So since I still have you here, you are a GORUCK Cadre. So I have to ask, if people want to do an adventure with you or another event, which GORUCK events should they be looking to sign up for?
Most of the events under the Expeditions program, Navigator, Core, Legacy, Z, and Ascent, I'm at, and I'm known to pop into other ones. Some of the Navigator events, the names are going to change to match the environments that they're in. And I think we all agree that that's a good move. A lot of the curriculum will match the specific terrain that it's in rather than offering the same classes all over the place. I think it makes sense that if we're in a desert, we're going to be doing things that are different than if we're here in San Diego or in the mountains in Colorado. So we're going to match the classes to the terrain, and we'll be offering those in the mountains, in the forest, swamps, beach, in the ocean, in the jungle. And that'll give people a variety of ecosystems or biomes they can learn classes in that are specific to their interests. So if you say, I always wanted to go to jungle, be a jungle navigator. You'll learn jungle survival, jungle navigation. It'll be specific to that biome. Now, there's some shared elements, but for the most part, each event will be specific to that biome. And I think that'll appeal to people, and it'll be a lot more fun and a little bit more straightforward when people ask questions about what they can expect.
I think so too. And I think it will allow GORUCK to bring Navigator to more locations.
Yeah, we've got a list of places that we're going to offer these in 2018, and the calendar is about to go live. We've obviously been focusing a lot on Constellation, and as Constellation kind of fills up and matures, the next step is the Expedition Heavy and Tough. That calendar is going to launch, and we're going to have Heavy and Toughs that are off trail, so out of the urban environment. Almost everybody's done their Toughs and Heavies in urban terrain, and these are going to take a step out of the urban terrain and offer
That's exciting.
a challenging team event in non-urban terrain. It's also pretty exciting. We did a beta in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, and it was a success. That's the next move with the calendar, and then the Navigators.
Very cool. Cadre Mikey B had the Rainforest Ruck up in Port Angeles, Washington. I did both of those events, both of those toughs. It was back to back. And the second one, we did a lot of hiking. It was a really good time.
That's awesome. Yeah, so many cadre have experience and interest in different types of environments. It just makes sense that with everyone's background being slightly different, everyone's training being slightly different, most people eventually get out of the urban environment. So it makes sense that some of our events get out of the urban environment, and plenty for Cadre to share in those environments.
Yeah, and I think you can really let Cadre play to their strengths.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's one thing that Cadre at GORUCK are not short of, is lots of cool stories and experiences to share with people. I think that's why people keep coming back.
I think so too. It's definitely a unique event with very unique Cadre. I know that's one of the draws that keep people coming back to the events.
Heck yeah. I mean, the great friendships have been forged, across the board in the community, and it's fun. And I think that, everybody wants to learn something from everyone that's at an event, but especially the Cadre. And it's nice for Cadre to have environments that they're experts in, kind of through the Cadre and through the environment, teach lessons that you can only learn in those specific environments. And those takeaways you'll never forget. All of us have experienced that being a part of the GORUCK community, but I think there's plenty more lessons to learn from all the guys.
So true.
And to juice some of those lessons, right? You got to juice them in the right environment.
Yeah. Man, well, this has been awesome. I feel bad taking more of your time.
Oh, man, I'm psyched to talk to you.
Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. I truly appreciate it. I know how incredibly busy you are with your family and you there in San Diego. So thank you.
No, thank you. It's fun to be a part of this and watch All Day Ruckoff grow and give everybody a media outlet.
Awesome, man. Well, have a great time tomorrow night at Constellation and have a great time at the Expedition next week.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to get back to Lake Tahoe. It's one of the places that we've gone to repeatedly. And this year, the Sierra's got so much snow. We had Snow Navigator in March. It was something like 26 feet of snowpack where we had our camp. And from what I can tell, most of it's melted in the AO that the Navigator's at next weekend. And it'll be neat to see how green and how high the water is and whether or not there's fish. But to see that, year in and year out is a pretty awesome experience.
That's wild. Thank you so much for listening to the All Day Ruckoff podcast. To learn more about PACElid and to get links to everything we talked about during the show, visit the show notes at alldayruckoff.com/podcast/episode-006. To learn more about All Day Ruckoff, you can always visit us at alldayruckoff.com. Did you enjoy the show? We would love a review on Apple Podcasts. Think we can do something better? Send an email directly to me at brian@alldayruckoff.com. Want a chance to win a free entry into the Pathfinder Ruck Training Program? Leave a comment on our website at alldayruckoff.com/podcast/episode-006 with your most creative use for a PACElid. Want your very own PACElid at a discount? Use coupon code ALLDAY15, that's ALLDAY15 at pacelid.com for 15% off. Thanks so much again, and remember, attitude is everything, keep yours positive, and drink hard, ruck harder.